This is a reading from the 20th chapter of John. Mary of Magdala stood just outside the tomb, and she was crying. And as she cried, she looked into the tomb and saw two angels in white who sat, one at the head and the other at the foot of the place where the body of Jesus had lain. The angels spoke to her. "Why are you crying?" they asked. "Because they have taken away my Lord, and I don't know where they have laid him," she said. With these words, she turned and noticed Jesus standing there without realizing that it was Jesus. "Why are you crying?" said Jesus to her. "Who are you looking for?" She, supposing that he was the gardener, said, "Oh, sir, if you have carried him away, please tell me where you have laid him, and I will take him away." Jesus said to her, "Mary." At this, she turned right round and said to him in Hebrew, "Master." "No," said Jesus, "do not hold me now. I have not yet gone up to the Father. Go and tell my brothers that I am going up to my Father and your Father, to my God and your God." And Mary of Magdala went off to the disciples with the news, "I have seen the Lord." And she told them what he had said to her. In the spirit of resurrection, I'm going to take a do-over on last week's Easter message. It seems to me that I tried to introduce too many stories at once and wound up with no clear path through a tangled thicket of ideas. So I'm going to try again, starting in a different place. In another friends meeting many years ago, I was talking in a small group about how it was the fact of resurrection that made it possible for me to attempt to live in the way of Christ. Because, I said, to live in the way of Christ demands a certain willingness to die, to give up one's life for others. And the only way that I could become willing in that way, I said, was to know that death was not the end. And someone else in the group, whom I will call Jane for right now, said, "There are worse things than death." And all I can say to that, knowing Jane as I did, so I say this with honesty and sincerity, is that Jane is a better person than I am, a far better person, less selfish and with less pride. Because my own life, and each one of yours also for that matter, seems so immensely and irreplaceably valuable to me. And this thing, my life, with so great and yet so finite a value, I am not willing to sacrifice for another part of the creation if that really draws the whole enterprise of me to a close. If that sacrificial act really is the end of my consciousness within the universe, the end of my ideas, my experiences, my thoughts, my stories, my acts of love, of everything that makes me feel, for better and oh, so much more for worse, the person, the creation that I am. If that sacrificial act really is the end of my consciousness, I am not willing to risk it. To use a story from last week, I cling to the I key on my keyboard. I don't mean to type it 5 times when once will do, but I am not willing to get rid of it either as an expression of who I am or as a significant portion of the lives of my family, my friends, my community. But I could take that risk if death were not the end. I could take that risk if death were a way station in transferring my soul from one form of being to another form of being. I could take that risk if I knew that in some way I would continue to live in and with my family, my friends, my community. I could take that risk if I thought that somewhere, somehow, after death, I would see God face to face, which means that not only would God have a face, but so would I. Some ineffable Dan would still be able to see, to experience, to participate in love. That's why I need Easter, because I am not able to be a Christian without it. So, having made that personal confession, I want to add to it the words of another. Last Sunday, Easter Sunday, Pope Francis preached what was, we know now, his last sermon. It is beautiful. It touches on the reasons why it matters to me to be a Christian. It is inspiring. And as Catholic homilies tend to be, it is relatively short. So I would like to read most of it to you, not all of it, but most of it. And when his words are finished, I will be finished this morning, because there's nothing I could add. Francis starts by alluding to the verses from John that occur immediately before the ones I began with this morning. Mary Magdalene, seeing that the stone of the tomb had been rolled away, ran to tell Peter and John. After receiving the shocking news, the two disciples also went out, and, as the gospel says, the two were running together. The main figures of the Easter narratives all ran. On the one hand, running could express the concern that the Lord's body had been taken away. But on the other hand, the haste of Mary Magdalene, Peter, and John expresses the desire, the yearning of the heart, the inner attitude of those who set out to search for Jesus. He, in fact, has risen from the dead and therefore is no longer in the tomb. We must look for him elsewhere. This is the message of Easter. We must look for him elsewhere. Christ is risen. He is alive. He is no longer a prisoner of death. He is no longer wrapped in the shroud, and therefore we cannot confine him to a fairy tale. We cannot make him a hero of the ancient world or think of him as a statue in a museum. On the contrary, we must look for him. And this is why we cannot remain stationary. We must take action, set out to look for him in life, look for him in the faces of our brothers and sisters, look for him in everyday business, look for him everywhere except in the tomb. We must look for him without ceasing, because if he has risen from the dead, then he is present everywhere. He dwells among us. He hides himself and reveals himself even today in the sisters and brothers we meet along the way, in the most ordinary and unpredictable situations of our lives. He is alive and is with us always, shedding the tears of those who suffer and adding to the beauty of life through the small acts of love carried out by each of us. For this reason, our Easter faith, which opens us to the encounter with the risen Lord and prepares us to welcome him into our lives, is anything but a complacent settling into some sort of religious reassurance. On the contrary, Easter spurs us to action, to run like Mary Magdalene and the disciples. It invites us to have eyes that can see beyond, to perceive Jesus, the one who lives, as the God who reveals himself and makes himself present even today, who speaks to us, goes before us, surprises us. Like Mary Magdalene, every day we can experience losing the Lord, but every day we can also run to look for him again, with the certainty that he will allow himself to be found and will fill us with the light of his resurrection. Brothers and sisters, this is the greatest hope of our life. We can live this poor, fragile, and wounded existence clinging to Christ because he has conquered death. He conquers our darkness, and he will conquer the shadows of the world to make us live with him in joy forever. This is the goal towards which we press on, as the Apostle Paul says, forgetting what lies behind and straining forward to what lies ahead. Like Mary Magdalene, Peter, and John, we hasten to meet Christ. And so we cannot settle for the fleeting things of this world or give in to sadness. We must run, filled with joy. Let us run towards Jesus. Let us rediscover the inestimable grace of being his friends. Sisters, brothers, in the wonder of the Easter faith, carrying in our hearts every expectation of peace and liberation, we can say, with you, O Lord, everything is new. With you, everything begins again.